Alright, now I was recording a different video, but it was coming off the wrong kind of way. It was coming off divisive, and I really wasn't trying to be divisive. I'm really trying to be more inclusive than divisive, so let me rephrase what I was going to say. You can't stop just at African history. You probably shouldn't even start just at African history. Because, okay, John Henry Clark, he said this himself. Like, when you start studying like history, you have to understand it in context. And if you just study one side, you don't understand the context. Because there's black people like all over the world. Like I ain't gonna say the majority, but like a lot of kings and queens and popes and a lot of influential people in Europe were black. That's something to take into consideration. And I'll go a little bit more into that about, there are black people all around the world. And I don't know. First off, we do live in a European dominated society. So you should understand European history and European philosophy if pretty much what you're going to come up against is who? Europeans. And here's a map of the West African trading empires from the 1800s to the 1500s. These empires mainly got rich by trading gold and salt. And actually, they traded slaves, too. They traded slaves with Europeans and with Arabs. Here's a West African proverb. Salt comes from the north, gold from the south, and silver from the country of the white men. But the word of God and the treasures of wisdom only come from Timbuktu. How did West African empires impact European trade? African people and African goods played an important role in arousing European interest in world resources. The Portuguese carried goods from Europe to West African empires, trading metals and clothes, and manufactured goods for gold. The scholarship of Timbuktu focused on Islam, but also encompassed mathematics, astronomy, law, geography, botany, medicine, music. Plato, Aristotle, Ptolemy, and Hippocrates were studied at Timbuktu, and they actually translated works from Arabic. This is the Grand Mosque built in Timbuktu. It was built in 1327 by the first Mosque of Mali, and he paid 200 kilograms of gold to have this building built. And this is a current picture. The building is still there. After changing trade routes in 1325, Mansa Musa made Timbuktu pretty much like the center of the Mali Empire for trade. But my point in bringing up the Malian Empire, Shanghai, Ghana, it's really like three of them. There's some overlap with some of them, but they are kind of sort of different people and the same people, depending on what point in time you look at. So we just gonna put it all together to make it simple. So here's the thing. They made their money in trade. They did trade with other Africans, but they traded with Europeans. They had valuable resources and goods and services that they traded with Europeans. This is what made them rich. Now, what led to the downfall of this is you can't be using your logic working with everybody else. See, when you learn it in some things, but you learn it in how to work with your own people. You also have to be learning in how to work with other people who don't necessarily share the same philosophies. Because right now, Timbuktu is, I think they have about 30,000 people, and it is pretty much like at third world status. And that's because they are no longer really needed in trade. Like, they found a way to go around them. So, I don't know. And you see, a lot of European philosophers studied at Timbuktu. But you can't even blame the Europeans on what happened with the downfall of Timbuktu. It was the Arabs. Like, when they converted to Islam, basically the Arabs controlled the empire through religion. Another thing to think about. I'm just saying. I'm clearly not against capitalism, Islam, Christianity, none of that, actually. But my thing is, it was a multitude of things that led to the downfall, but it was a multitude of things that led to, them building their way up too. So, the point to be taken is, you should try to have your people as learned as possible and able to work and deal with other people, because when you are the minority, you do have to trade with the majority. Pretty much like, look at Asian people. They do have their own culture, but they mainly pretty much business-wise deal like Europeans, just to be honest. You say the same thing about Arabs. They all have their they have their own culture at the house, but when it come to business, how they be acting. Okay, and here you got Reginald Lewis. Reginald Lewis is a good example of like the type of logic and what we really need to be teaching in the black community. Reginald Lewis was raised by a single mother. He played football. That's how he got a scholarship to college. He actually got hurt playing football in college, and I think he became a lawyer after that. But he wrote the book, Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun? Born to a single mother in the hood in Baltimore, Lewis was the first African American to ever close an overseas billion-dollar leverage buyout deal. He acquired an unprecedented global conglomeration of 64 companies in 31 countries and paved the way for future entrepreneurs and black leaders throughout his life work until he ultimately died at age 50. Now, Reginald Lewis, he was a cold dude. That's what I look at with that. He came from nothing and bought a billion-dollar company with other people's money and still made like billions of dollars. Like, that's the type of hustle you need to be teaching. Now, to be fair and honest, my favorite black leader, my favorite African leader, my favorite leader, period, is Thomas Sankara. Now, Thomas Sankara, he ain't lived that long, but in his time as president, he changed Burkina Faso like in 4 years. Like he did some stuff like ain't nobody ever done. And it's a quote from Sankara. When Europeans controlled our countries, they created debt. The debt was owed to their relatives in Europe. When they left, they expected Africans to pay off the debt. We should not be paying them shit. Imperialism is a system of exploitation that occurs not only with the brutal form of those that come from guns and conquering territories. Imperialism often occurs in more subtle forms. A loan, food aid, blackmail. We are fighting against a system that allows a handful of men on earth to rule all of humanity. And Burkina Faso means land of the upright man. My YouTube channel is called The Upright Man. That's really not. There's no coincidence there. Burkina Faso revolutionary leader was assassinated by his rivals October 15, 1987. He sought to give his country dignity, The Economist wrote at the time. That's The Economist magazine. But what I like about Sankara, he preached self-sufficiency. He preached humility. He brought women's rights to Africa. And if he was given enough time, he already pretty much changed the country. But like he was gonna revolutionize Burkina Faso, like more so, because he got it to where they were self-sufficient and didn't, need so much or if all any help from Europe or America. And he was about to start trading, with Europe and America to produce he was trying to get the country to where they could produce a surplus. Sankara said, you can kill the man, but you can't kill the idea. The ghost of Sankara still his spirit is strong all through West Africa. Now, you can say Reginald Lewis to Thomas Sankara is a pretty big jump, but we got to pretty much combine them two types of logic right there. Why? It ain't really worked for Thomas Sankara, and he was president of his own country. that he didn't take over by like military force, although he was a military leader. Interesting enough. But, and he did get killed by his best friend, matter of fact. But the thing is, we ain't got our own country. We live in America. We live in the United States of America. We don't run this country. I think Obama was pretty much proof of that. He like, okay, we here, but we don't run this country. We can be self-sufficient amongst ourselves in this country because other groups of people do that. But at the same time, we have to compete against other groups. That's where Reginald Lewis comes from. Like, Reginald Lewis didn't set out to be the best black businessman. He set out to be the best businessman.